Yep. I got the papers. It's like it's on the out. So then we just get started, I guess, right? We have five.
Here it comes.
Okay. We hold the meeting.
What? I thought Karen, that was a mistake, Karen was not here.
So I am.
Yeah, so there can't be a vote.
Just me.
Actually,
PM at any regular or special meeting of the board unless the motion is passed by the members then present to extend to a later specified cutoff time, and same shall be announced at the opening of each meeting. In addition, the board does not intend to begin a new
what those amendments are, and then the board will render its determination.
This is, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, pursuant to the local redevelopment housing law. And that law is, it's summarized in my memo to the board, dated November 13th. It was slightly different than the consistency review on the 26th day of the land use law. Now you got 45 days, not 35, to render the determination. And it's a mandatory review by the planning board, not just for consistency, because what the statute says is you should identify and advise your report to the governing body if there are any, but also to offer recommendations, which is very similar to what we normally do with ordinances, but this is slightly different because it's coming out of the local development housing law. And I cite the section 48 12A-7E is the section that empowers the board and requires the council to refer the amendment to the board for review.
Denise, are you picking him up okay on the voice?
I think so.
I have a slide, so I'll try to speak up.
Okay.
Madam Caldwell is here representing the borough to present the plan and show.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Myself, I'm Matt Jessup, who's a redevelopment attorney for the Borough Council as well. We're both here to provide some context and information to the board. I think Matt's gonna actually start out with some of the background and then I'll talk about the plan.
Sure, so, good evening,
Do we need to
Chairman.
swear anybody?
No, it's not testimony.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman, planning board members, as Jessica mentioned, my name is Matt Jessup from McFadden, Scotland, and Bauman, redevelopment counsel to the borough. It has been about 4 years since this property, 65 Morristown Road, has really been before you, so let me just get you quickly caught up to speed. As some of you may recall, in December of 2019, following a review by this board, the borough declared this property as an area in need of redevelopment. And then in July of 2020, again, after review by this board, the Borough Council adopted a redevelopment plan for this property, again, lot 125, lot 13. In 2022, the borough bought the property. In February of 2024, the borough issued a request for proposals to developers to try and find a developer who would redevelop the property in accordance with the redevelopment plan or in accordance with suggested amendments to the redevelopment plan in order to accommodate the project that's being proposed by each respondent. In May of 2024, the borough received 3 proposals, and they selected a proposal issued by 15 Sandsbury LLC. And that proposal, which you're going to hear about a little bit tonight, effectively is to redevelop the property, the old Audi car dealership property, into a classic and collector's car dealership. So a sort of unique car dealership, not selling 5 vehicles an hour, but selling 1 to 2 classic cars or collector cars per week. So what I would describe as a low volume, almost display oriented car dealership. The borough entered into a conditional redevelopers agreement with the developer in September, late September, giving the parties 120 days to primarily do 3 things. 1, consider any amendments required in the redevelopment plan. 2, negotiate a full redevelopment agreement. And 3, negotiate a purchase and sale agreement for the sale by the borough to 15 Sandsbury of this property so that they can develop it. So most recently, the Borough Council introduced an ordinance approving the redevelopment plan amendments that are before you tonight. And importantly, B, adopted a resolution referring these amendments to you. And as you heard earlier from your professionals, it's your role under the redevelopment law to review these amendments, to identify whether any of the amendments are inconsistent with the master plan, and to make any other recommendations with respect to the amendments that you find appropriate. And then that would be memorialized via a report, whether it be through the chair, through your general counsel, I refer to you, that gets issued back to the governing body. And then they would then proceed to act on second hearing and final adoption of the ordinance approving these plan amendments. So that's sort of where we are in this process, where we've come from, where we are, and where we look to be headed. At this point, unless anybody at the board has any questions with respect to the timetable and the process, I would ask Jessica Caldwell to take you through the plan amendments in detail.
Think we're okay, right? All right,
Okay, thank you, Matt. So we were charged with looking at the existing redevelopment plan that was adopted back in July 2020 against the proposal from the proposed developer. And it's a pretty straightforward proposal. They're really looking to reutilize the existing structure on the property, rehabilitate it, place in this classic car, collector car dealership, very low volume. Most of the cars would be stored inside with a maximum of 15 cars stored outside. They wanted to have some repair for the classic and collector cars, just to get them ready to sell, not repair for any other, just general public or any other people's cars. So there was a restriction on that, where basically they wanted to allow for up to 4 cars being repaired, but just utilizing 2 overhead exterior garage doors as the biggest to go into. There's also a consideration for potentially renting some of the cars just on a very limited basis. So what we did was added to permitted uses, classic and collector car dealerships, automotive repair, for classic and collector cars with a maximum of 4 repair bays with 2 exterior doors, and automotive rental as permitted principal uses. And then because there were prior restrictions under prohibited uses for automotive rental and automotive repair and sale, those were stricken from the prohibited uses. And then there's a section with respect to parking where we allow a maximum of 15 spaces for storage of vehicles outside. Indoor storage inside the building is unlimited, but limited by the size of the existing structure. Employee parking, parking would be, the standard would be set on employees, 1 space per employee. And then customer parking, 1 space per 5 cars being sold on the property. And then a requirement that the parking lot be screened on its perimeter. And there's a definition of classic and collector car dealership to ensure that the proposal meets the expectations that were set forth in that proposal from the developer. And that's essentially it. It's a pretty straightforward amendment to the existing plan. And we did receive a report from your planner, Mr. Pingo, and I could go through a couple of things that he noted, and if he doesn't mind. He went through the consistency review, which we also did, and I think we were in agreement on that it's consistent with the master plan. He asked for the basis of the vehicles, the parking standard. It was essentially based on the proposal being this really limited proposal, knowing that they would essentially most likely need 1 parking space per any employee that would come, which would likely come on their own. And then because of the really limited type of sales, that 1, parking space per 5 cars being sold would be a reasonable amount of parking, recognizing the fact that not a lot of people are going to be coming out at once. There's a lot of parking though around the building, so I don't think they're going to be limited or restricted on parking. He also asked about, there's a prohibition in the current redevelopment plan about parking in the front yard. And it's a little difficult to determine based on how the building's laid out, and we didn't have like a conceptual plan that had measurements and things. There may be a potential conflict with that provision. So if the board is interested in making that comment that perhaps there should be a carve out for some parking in the front yard on this, in this proposal with a classic car dealership, that would be a good comment for the board to make. And then there was also a question about the exterior doors and the requirement for the 4 bays with the 2 exterior doors, and just whether that should be clarified. And The intent is to allow 4 cars interior, with 2 overhead exterior doors accessing that space.
The garage.
Garage
Yeah,
doors.
that's what I.
So that should say garage doors instead of
bay doors.
exterior doors, that's
There-
fine.
Because their doors are open.
Or overhead doors or something, that would be another good comment to make. So I think that's really pretty much all of the comments, unless you have anything else you want to raise.
Yeah, prefer to have exterior bay doors,
Yeah, just to clarify,
Yeah,
because
no,
I
no.
know there are some members of the board that look at the literal language of the ordinances, so I just want to.
Yeah.
It's a minor.
Any other comment that you wish to make?
No, thank you.
Okay.
And I would just note that, and I know the board knows this, but for the benefit of the public, this of course is amending the redevelopment plan. Should that go forward, the developer, of course, will have to come before the planning board with its full site plan application, as any other project would, to be evaluated against the zoning, including the redevelopment plan. So, this is not in lieu of any other approval that the developer would need, but in fact, they would be back before you for, the more traditional site plan approval.
Because the borough entered into a, we don't agree yet, it's not.
A conditional redevelopers agreement that, gives us 120 days to negotiate that redevelopment agreement. So that is certainly the intent.
Just a question, if I can. The underlying redevelopment plan, what's the requirement for sidewalks in front of that? Do we know?
It does require, I believe, sidewalks in the front, and then the conceptual plan allows for sidewalks in the front and some grading of the front of the property.
So just so you know, the reason why I ask is we have a pending application down the street, 53. And that plan required at least an 8-foot sidewalk. They came in seeking a variance and we're trying to push back. Since this is in the same corridor, so we need to make sure that that's an 8-foot sidewalk requirement, so that we can start building a wider sidewalk on that street.
And you certainly make that comment, sure, yeah.
Well, can I chime in on that a little? I think my last comment in my review was basically that we're amending the schedule of permitted uses and eliminating prohibited use, making it all work together. But everything else is still gonna be there.
I just didn't know whether the underlying,
Because this is a redevelopment plan, this is not, so.
Correct.
So he's saying is,
Everything in the redevelopment plan that is not modified still applies to
Right,
when you come in for site.
understood, I just didn't know what the underlying plan calls for.
yeah, does the redevelopment plan specify?
No, I understand.
If it doesn't, the recommendation I would ask is
Is that it
that
needs to?
it,
Consistency with
with the adjacent properties or plans for the adjacent property, this way, because there's other sites in between those two that seem to be on the redevelopment process.
That makes sense.
I have a bunch of questions, so I'll let other people go. Okay, first question I have is, did you, look at, comps for this business? These are, there are at least 3 others that I know of in the general vicinity that have this same type of business. And did you look at any of them in terms of what their operations look like, or number of spaces, anything like that?
No, we did not.
Okay, probably should have.
Well, that's really, isn't that for the developer?
What?
Isn't it for the developer to demonstrate to the council? that-
No, in terms of setting guidance, in terms of any of these things, like 5 spaces for one property. Well, did you look at comps? What, they're existing functioning enterprises that have ratios of spaces to, now I'm encouraged if you say, look, we're just kind of setting a floor here maybe because there's lots of parking, if it was your comment that there should be plenty. And this is just saying, well, you gotta have at least that. I would suggest that 1 space for 5 is me. So, that's why I wanted to know if you would check comps on this to see what the reality.
The other standards for, field dealerships didn't look at the actual dealerships as just.
So I guess the way to handle this might be with 4A, there should be some more explicit indication of what the formula what's the rationale behind the number? That's all, this is feedback to the council, I understand, but there should be some, what was the rationale for that? The automotive rentals, so I want us to be, I guess, more explicit that, because I think that's your intent, honestly, is that there's a number of vehicles that are either owned by the dealer or more commonly on consignment this kind of a situation, and they're wanting to reserve the right to rent those vehicles. So there won't be a fleet of rental.
Correct.
And I think we should, I derive that is the intent. I think we should be more explicit as feedback. We should be more explicit that they want the ability to rent the cars that are on consignment, you know, that seems to be the, whatever the right word is. Just, it's not like, oh, well, here's the stuff I'm selling. Oh, by the way, I have 5 Corvettes that
I
I'm
think
renting.
we could maybe just make the rental a permitted accessory, secondary use and not primary. As opposed to the fear that somebody comes in and turns it to make it just a rental, or to rent a car. So if it's the secondary use, that fixes that.
It actually is under, it's not entirely clear, but it is under accessory uses, so
So I
the
think that-
repair and the
That's
rental.
that.
I'm listening to
Accessory use.
Keys clarity, and we're just, these comments sometimes are just clarity.
Yeah,
I would envision, and this is in terms of streetscape and so forth, that talking about the sidewalk, I would envision there would need to be, they'd either want to put in the front of the building, just an outdoor display of the car. That's kind of like what, Paul Miller does. They'll put a car out in front, you know, and it's like, okay, man, stay there or whatever, but it's kind of for the purposes of, if there's space, then it's maybe instead of parking in front, they'd be permitted to display in front. I mean, it's technically their inventory.
A different definition of,
And what would we need to say anything to allow them to do that? I want them to give them the flexibility to do that, to be able to have merchandise between the front wall of the building and the sidewalk.
so rather than permitting parking in the front, where we say storage of vehicles for sale outside, including in the front yard.
I guess there's a difference between situating the car, their car, and parking. I guess that's, and whatever it needs to be, we should just be really clear. And I don't want, if we say, no, there should not be any parking in the front of the building, you were kind of like, well, correctly, you said, look, well, when they do the final plan, it'll be more evident. Now, and John, I don't know whether at this point you need to, what do we need to say about parking in the front?
We need to say, and I'm not gonna put words in the board's mouth, but make report to the council that's required. And in that report, you're gonna express that there was concern about parking ratio and that some rationale
Right.
included. Well, everything you talked about would be compiled in a, we will call it report, the
Feedback report.
Right, and just everything that's been discussed tonight, you would put in the report, and it would be up to the council to consider those recommendations. So what's important is a 2-step process. One, there has to be a finding of not inconsistent,
Right,
or if there are inconsistencies, you need to identify.
right,
The second part would be the recommendations that we're talking about.
Right.
now. That's the role of the board, and then there's a process by which council considers these recommendations, and they can accept them and make those modifications. Probably won't require that it can be introduced, I don't know. It's Scrivener than one thing.
it's totally council's discretion anyway, right? We're
Yeah, but
advising
it's,
still,
yeah, with recommendations.
the recommendation.
With
Advice
with
clause.
the inconsistencies, if there was a negative report back,
Okay,
the council, there's a whole nother procedure for that. Council, with the full authorized membership of that council, the majority of which can override and
Right.
proceed. But you're aware that the same
Yeah.
process is with the land use law. But it's twofold.
okay. Also just along the same line, so I'd like them to have the ability to display product between the sidewalk and the facade.
That would require.
And I'd like there to be transparency in the front, that they can display product next to their windows. You know, like showroom windows, basically, so that passerby can see the product. You know, that's kind of part of the whole vision. That's just feedback more for them, and I don't think the council needs to know that, but we're just trying to make it, in my opinion, better. We already talked about the various spots that they should be exterior bay doors, which is fine. I don't have much, let's see. That's basically all, that's fairly simple, it's not elaborate here. Does anyone have, while I was commenting, any ideas or any questions or? And John, obviously, it's your opinion as a professional, this is not inconsistent.
No, I tried to express that in my memo without stealing thunder with, but, no, it didn't trouble me from that perspective. I take no issue with the testimony that's been presented. You saw the reasons I
Yeah.
offer in the memo.
I'm just double checking.
There was nothing there that triggered a concern from that perspective.
Yeah, the part A.
Yes, no, I didn't have anything to do with that. I really don't have an issue with the project. It's important, so.
One of the things I've noticed with these type of enterprises is that there's the normal traffic where they're working personal relationships, people come in, they've got long-standing stuff, the car gets conditioned, no big deal, it's there, they negotiate the sale and so. The other nice thing about these sites is that they'll have events. Like, often enterprises will have occasional events where quite a few more people are gonna show up because they're there for, you know, donuts and coffee, you know, something where they've attracted, you know, more people together, whether maybe a club. And that can occur, and so I guess it's a peak parking demand. You know, like, well, we need at least 24 Porsches outside the door, you know, okay, well, great, you know, on the side, but I'm just saying for the applicant, they should assess whether they're gonna do that or not, and if they're gonna do it, let's try to make sure we have parking, we don't create a problem for
If you'd like to,
other
I can
organizations.
suggest a recommended language to that consideration should be given towards discussions about the intention to have such.
Yeah,
We
marketing
don't know.
strategies, we don't know.
So that's something that the council works out with
Yeah.
the developer, but you can ask and ask them to consider that.
I would
You think
prefer,
it's,
I would prefer if that was left out. I wouldn't add that recommendation. if you
that's up
asked
to
me.
you guys.
No, I'm just going on record.
And that's okay too, because we're sitting here chatting.
No, I
And everyone's
know.
listening, and it's
Right.
like, when we talk about the space, the space that's there, that's extra, the parking spaces, that's great.
But at the end of the day, the reality is, if there's not enough parking for an event, and the person that owns the facility doesn't have events.
No, that's not what happens.
No. It is-
Reality is reality. It doesn't
Yeah, the
matter.
reality is though, if you own a business and no one can park and no one shows up to the event. I don't go to events that I can't park at, they're not very successful, so they're gonna have to figure that out. I don't want to go down a path where we're always denying that because we're worried about something that may or may not happen and add all this extra to it. When there's a business underlying that knows how to function, I can figure it out. I think on the day-to-day for 350 out of 365, there's sufficient parking for what that is main intensive purposes. If they're gonna have a special event, they can go to a next door neighbor or someone else and say, hey, can we borrow your parking lot? That's for them to figure out. I'd stay out of that part. That's just my opinion.
Well, I don't want to put a constraint on it. I'm just saying that
But
when
that's what
feedback,
happened.
and I just want to say that there's just feedback that if there's extra space, it's like, well, we have these spaces, but that's only like, we can satisfy this because we've got 4 times as many spaces. Yeah, just one, look at the comps, you know, yourself, just, and we don't need to put anything in. I'm just saying feedback, the way these things run often is in this method. And I agree with you that, well, we can't mandate that they support for their people, you know. We could, but we're not mandating, the point is, we're not mandating they support their people local. Okay, so, but it is something that's very likely to happen, ideally will happen. And so the key is to just think about the logistics of how that property will function when they have these events in their judgment that can handle well. That's all. But no, there doesn't have to, this can be feedback, but it doesn't have to be embraced, it doesn't have to be memorialized in a rule or a change, like, you know, this has got to be the ratio, you know, one space per car, because you might have these events, so. They're ancillary uses, I guess. All right, well, the important thing was what John said, so it's the not inconsistent, and the rest is all just suggestions and feedback and so forth. I don't know that any of the feedback was like of major concern, it was just, here's some ideas and things to think about, right? Was there any, I'm forgetting, was there any like a rigorous constraint or anything?
Counselors,
So I can summarize the comments that I heard, there are about 5 or 6 comments, it sounds to me, and I, similar to Mr. Zabel, I don't want to speak for the board, but it sounds to me that these comments are not inconsistencies with the master plan, but things that you might request that the council consider. The first one I heard was consideration with 8-foot sidewalks or at least consistency with the surrounding area. The second one was the comment related to the specificity of a garage door or exterior bay doors, just clarifying that language. Third comment was the front yard parking comment, and this ties into a later comment, kind of related whether or not it's a parking area versus an outdoor display area, and the distinction between parking and display. It seems like it's intent there. The consideration to the applicant or business operator to have a display window. And then another comment, I guess this would be either the 4th or 5th comment, depending on how you're counting that last one, whether the rental use would be accessory and not primary. It sounds like that is in the amendment, but maybe just the key is clarity. And then finally, this discussion regarding marketing strategies and
Peak capacity.
peak capacity for potential events.
Conscious of it, but.
Just be conscious of it, but not necessarily.
No, just, by the way. One other one, and John, in terms of, bay doors, garage doors, is there a constraint in terms of them being, side load or front load or anything in the zone?
I have no plans, I want concept, I'm not sure I could really delve into that. I was involved in any of the discussions.
Does our planner know, does anyone know whether there's any? Well, part of it may be the intent, you know, I think the only concern that typically comes up is people putting front loading garage doors.
They would be on the side to the rear of the building.
You're gonna likely put them to the side of the rear, yeah.
The most possible place is provided they can make the turn in.
Yeah, obviously the implications. So, I think, well, I don't know, do we have an opinion? John, do you have an opinion on how the garage doors should be situated? That anything we need to mention back to feedback?
No, because if they're gonna be placed on the side or the back, If that's.
No, then that's great. Right.
Yeah, and, you know, that might be enforced in the plan, I'm not sure the board wants to impose that, that's up to you guys, I prefer to be on the side of the back and the indications that's where it's going, it makes sense. You want the display area in front, you don't,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, so it's gonna go in, you know, in an intrusive place, I mean, as intrusive as the garage doors can be, I don't know.
I think we can be fairly certain that, you know, this type of business would, unless it's, like I said, logistically impossible, they would want it to be outside.
And I think it's gonna end up in the back, if I remember the site in way back, you know, you need to be able to park or get in, and I think it's set up for like society.
So there are two doors,
Yeah,
no, two bay doors to the right side.
to the right side, that's right.
There's a
When I drive
recess.
by it and I.
There's a recessed driveway with a garage to the right if you're staring at the building. That exists, that makes one big door.
That's my big.
Yep.
So we think that's probably what, you know, that they would do side or rear wing, but if they didn't, if they just said, you know, gonna just use the two bay doors that are there, is there planning or vision or whatever in that zone that would not be happy with those doors there? I realize they exist in other properties.
They're not
prohibited.
they're not prohibited,
Right.
it's not obvious as you drive by, unless you're coming.
And it's not part of the streetscape vision.
Yeah, and remember, this is a long-standing building, we're kind of used to this building, if they're gonna renovate it the way it is, it's minimal environment.
No, I just want to be sure that it's
There's no
it's
standard,
okay.
there's no standard in the redevelopment plan that talks about that.
It's okay.
The issue, and as Mr. Marcus said, it's, I'm not concerned about that.
All right, so we covered it basically then, it's not a concern. Anything else?
No, I'm just to add to the front, if you have garage doors in the front, that would be a traffic hazard too, so the side doors and the back doors. You've got a side
I don't
door in
think that's
front
gonna
of
be
that,
an issue.
so you don't want a lot of.
It's just what's there now, they're deep,
Yeah.
they're way back. They're like two cars.
You still have a driveway.
In the back.
But there may be curb cut questions, right? I don't know how many cuts, do you know, how many cuts are there now?
You could call it three, but one big one and one.
Look at it this way, Mr. Chairman, it operated for a long time as a dealership. This is gonna be a kind of same operation, but at a lesser intensity,
Yeah, no,
so.
no, I'm just sort of been saying, you know, considering what they'll run up again, you know, it's like, hey, I've got a great plan, you know, and you want to come in and you put your plan, and then you find out what DOT says, now you gotta close up two of your cuts, you know, it's like.
Yeah,
okay.
but DOT's gonna look at that, and Mr. Simon's not here. If there's no impact, there's a finding of no
No,
impact.
it's that, yeah.
And so and this doesn't generate the kind of traffic volumes where I think, and I'm not limited for traffic engineers, but in my experience, this is not something that rises to the level of the.
But they'll deal with that at site.
Huh?
They would deal with that at site plan.
Yeah.
So,
Another
Do I need to make a motion to say it's not inconsistent?
Yeah, you
Do you need to
did.
say?
Yeah, can I just jump in real quick? I apologize, Mr. Chairman. You ran through the report, that was wonderful. I'd like to just make sure that the report distinguishes. First, I think what Mr. DeMarco was about to say, which is that there's a finding that the amendments are not inconsistent with management plans. Two, are any of the items that you went through that are recommendations by the planning board for the council to consider? Because as the board heard earlier, there's a process under the redevelopment law, which would require the council to basically vote to either accept or reject those. As opposed to what I thought I heard from Mr. Chairman on a couple of these items that were more advisory. And I think the comment was some of these are not for the council in particular, but more probably for the developer really to hear. And that would be advisory, that would not be a quote recommendation that the governing body would have to consider and either vote to accept or reject. So the record of what you described, I couldn't agree more with. It just wasn't clear which items were truly recommendations to the council, such as the garage bay, clarifying garage bay doors, and things that were advisory, such as peak parking and or the display product out front and the windows, et cetera. So my only ask is that.
So one recommendation, it's great, recommendation. One recommendation is 4A, needs to be some kind of formula or rationale applied to it. Don't just say, oh, it looks like 15, you know, not for for 5 spots, 4C. Oh, 5 for 1 ought to be okay.
You're saying a direct call.
Yeah, there needs to be some substance and rationale for that.
I only put that comment in clarification from the planner.
Well, the recommendation is clarification. He's saying, well, what do they need to
Well,
do?
that could be advisory as well.
Well, anything could be, yeah. I'm saying that regarding this, that should be clarified. That is a recommendation that be clarified. It's up to them to do whatever they want to do with it. That would be a recommendation. If secondary use of the rental is already there, you know, it's really clear it's secondary use, and that's great. If it's not really clear, it should be clear. It was a recommendation, the rental. So when you review it and you say, no, it's really clear, it's secondary use, okay, fine. Fixing the bay doors, that's just, the name, just bay doors, that's just minor. I think the 8-foot sidewalk is a recommendation, right?
I could ask that.
Yeah.
And I think the display and the peak parking is more advisory.
Yeah, I think anything else. I'm trying to pick out the ones, you know,
So it sounds like there's 2 recommendations, and they would be, a more definitive statement as to the parking standard. And then, incorporating the 8-foot sidewalk,
If it's not already.
if it's not already, and everything else, are advisory comments.
yeah.
Is that advisory?
Well, it's a typo, or it's more like a
Correct.
script, yeah, script, whatever you want to do for that. It should definitely be there, otherwise it's not clear.
That could be, that's an easy.
Yeah. Anything else that one of the things should be rise to the level of recommendation. I'm okay with it. So we're free now to.
Was not trying to get.
No, I know.
I just wanted to try
I
and
have, like,
clear the record.
I'd rather do it once and correct, so I would put before the board a motion that the recommend, or the plan as amended is not inconsistent with the master plan. And that there are 3 recommendations, one being that the plan reaffirms or has an 8-foot sidewalk, that the parking ratio get further explained and rationalized as to the recommendation of 5 cars per space and 1 per employee, that the bay doors get cleaned up, and with the advice of that display vehicles should be allowed, and there should be consideration or thought either in the redevelopers agreement or in any other further discussions with the redeveloper as to peak use of an event space and how that will be accommodated.
Roll call.
Mr. DeMarco,
Yes.
Ms. Gardner,
Yes.
Ms. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Walton,
Yes.
and Mr. Zazarino.
Yes.
The motion carried.
Thank you all very much, we appreciate it.
Okay, pay the bills.
I'll move to pay the bill, amount of $15,871.50.
I just had one question, but if I can find it. Bill?
It's something.
Yes, there's. Well, John, I can direct this to you, there's something. that's
Right.
In the detail, but what that is.
Yeah, they asked him why he hadn't talked to him.
Invoice date.
Yeah, invoice for 11/8.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, in one of the explanations, it says that you're developing a guidebook. A guidebook.
What is the invoice number? Karen? Is this is this an escrow or a non-escrow?
Escrow.
See the bill.
So why
Invoice
don't you get my
4, 5, 5.
I didn't, it's in the detail, but you're actually.
Yeah, do you have the bill?
Yeah, here, I have it.
516.
This is. I don't know if it's on.
It's kind of,
I don't know which one.
benefits go. Days.
Which,
I'm so sorry.
application number is or invoice number?
The invoice is 455569.
Yeah.
4556.
Yes,
SP 249.
and in the explanation, in the detail, there's, it's lumped into one item. It says that you're developing a guidebook. Are you developing a guidebook?
No.
Isn't that the it's,
Not in order of the, here we go.
review?
Oh,
of
because
downtown
they
guide.
didn't understand.
It's review, not.
Review, not prepare. They were raising questions about the application and they wanted to understand some of the design guidelines and the design guidebook. So that was a conversation with the applicant. I wasn't preparing it, so I was reviewing it against the questions and working with them to understand what they were concerned about.
There's a guidebook for downtown.
They were adopted one, the
Oh, okay,
ordinance,
so there is,
and they were had questions about it.
so it exists right now, you're not developing a new
No,
guide-
no, we did that.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not developing a guidebook. If I were
All right.
to know about it.
Wasn't-
No, it was in conjunction with the review of the application and the discussions.
Pay the bills. The amount of $15,871 for the easement.
Second,
Yep. Mr. DeMarco,
yes.
Ms. Gardner,
Yes,
Ms. Geller. Yes. Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Walton,
Yeah.
and Mr. Zazarino.
Yes.
The motion carried.
Okay, so we are now to our public hearings section. Our main event is Equinet Properties at 55 Claremont Road. This is at the corner of Claremont and Mill Street.
Good evening. I'm Roy Kernos. I represent Equinet Properties. Represented them since our first application on February 8, 2022. There's been 3 other hearings after that. Now, Mr. Graham, I assume you want to start with Mr. Brightly and his engineering report. Is that how you want to handle this?
What?
They should present the application, the changes, and then.
Yeah, you should summarize, just, you should go through this is what we intend to do, and then you would say, I'd like to.
Well, if you recall, the first application that we filed was under the DCL zone. Halfway through that presentation, there was a remark from a board member saying, wait a minute, this property is actually in the redevelopment zone, Quimby Lane, subsection 6. Which came as a surprise, not only to my client, but to Mr. Brightly and Mr. Zabo, who had approved this as a completed application, and we all believed that the property was in that zone. Instead of making an issue about that, a legal issue or otherwise, we agreed that we would redo the plans, which we did. The plans were substantially similar to those plans that were filed when everybody believed this property was in the D-CL zone. Those plans pretty much conform to the standards of that zone. The property was placed, we agreed that it was in the redevelopment zone for purposes of moving this application forward and getting this project completed. To do so, the redevelopment plan was amended, and Mr. Masucci, the principal of Equinet, was named as a master redeveloper. In addition, the density of the project of this property was changed to 18 or 19 units per acre. Our plan was for 8 units, which was permitted under, but we own a little more than 5.2 acres, 0.52 acres. So we appeared before the board. We had a hearing, which we didn't complete. Our experts were Mr. G. Migliano, I'm having problems with my voice, who's our engineer, David Minnow, who was the architect, and a planner. Didn't complete. We went that was a virtual hearing. We then had a second hearing, which was rudely interrupted by some pornographic display. Then it was decided no more virtual hearings. We'll have live hearings. We've renoticed this for 3 or 4 times, while Mr. Simoff had made a remark that that's not a big deal. It is when you have a paralegal spend 6 hours labeling things and mailing them and posting it in the newspaper and everything else. In any event, we came back, we made our final presentation, our planner testified, the architect testified, and Mr. G. Migliano testified as to the engineering issues. We had the deliberation, and at time, in that deliberation, it became apparent to us that we weren't going to get approvals. So we based that on the fact that most of the comments of the board members were, it's too big for that site. Even though that site is the biggest site in the redevelopment zone, and it's the only site, one of the few, that isn't in the floodplain. And we recognized that there was some criticism of the property in terms of its size. 8 townhome units. There was comments made by, this was a beautiful application. David Minnow's a terrific architect. The materials that were utilized, which were classic materials that would fit within the architecture of this town, but it's too big. So we asked that the vote not be taken, so we could go back and confer and decide what to do with the property. It took us 6, 7, 8 months to figure that out. First, we were going to make a rentals, and we were going to do this, we were going to do that. I don't want to bore you with it. And finally, we arrived at, we'll take 2 units off the building. So it's no longer 8 units, it's 6 units. And that according to Mr. Zabo's testimony, reduces the building coverage by a substantial amount, and the impervious coverage by a substantial amount. So we are now here to make our final presentation. This is the best we can do. It's 6 units, the same design, the same terrific building materials, the same landscaping, and just a few minor modifications. So tonight I have our engineer, which will he'll go over briefly what's the plans that have, and those changes that were made from the 8-unit project. We've considered Mr. Brightly's letter. We've addressed most of those items. Mr. Zabo's report is not complimentary, but it's not uncomplimentary. I think he's always favored this application, but I don't want to speak for him. He did say he was in favor of the application at the deliberations. I think it was in November. I know it was cold weather, but it was in November sometime. So that's my opening.
Mr. Kronos, I didn't want to interrupt your opening, but I just want to put a few things on the record for the sake of the record. So just at the outset, although the board does have a quorum tonight, Mr. Kronos, as you're aware, the board does not have enough members who are at this time eligible to deliberate and vote on the application. Therefore, the applicant is permitted to present testimony, exhibits, and legal arguments to support its proposal, and the board may ask questions of the applicant and its witnesses. And assuming the applicant completes its presentation, any members of the public may also appear to ask questions of the applicant and voice concerns about or support for the proposal. But the board will not make a determination on the application tonight. Assuming no further delays or issues, the soonest the board will deliberate and vote on this application will be its regularly scheduled December 12th meeting. And further, I have reviewed the applicant's public notice and its notice sent to property owners within 200 feet of the property. I find those notices, that their content is accurate and complete. I find that they were timely published and served, being more than 10 days in advance of the initial hearing date, and therefore, this board has jurisdiction and authority to hear the matter. And further, on September 26th of this year, the applicant granted the board an extension of time within which to decide the application until December 31st, 2024.
I agree with that.
Did we collect, did we collect stipulations? Had Steve started collecting items at all?
did.
No, just wondered, that's all. And something no longer be relevant or whatever, just something had already been.
Yeah, we've started to, yes, spaces under the building will be assigned. But that was for the architect's testimony,
We might need to rehash
so
some.
there's quite a few, but again. How they change with the proposal.
Well, I understand it, just. for-
Yeah, so I reviewed this application and the prior proceedings in detail on my own and with Mr. Warner. And I would recommend that any of those stipulations or conditions or agreements with the applicant be reiterated in this hearing.
In addition to that, there are different members who may
Absolutely.
have different opinions as to those stipulations.
Does providing new stipulations, does that count as deliberating?
No. So
No, I just want to make sure. that-
Well, that's a very good question. So to clarify what I mean by deliberating would mean that the applicant completes its presentation. The board asks his questions, the public has an opportunity to ask questions, and then the hearing is closed.
I see, okay.
And then at that time, the board has the opportunity, if it so chooses, to openly deliberate and make a determination. That will not occur. That last piece will not occur tonight.
The deliberation and make a determination will not occur.
Correct.
Not tonight.
Okay.
Did you mention stipulations?
Steve just collects, as the testimony occurs and his comments go through, Steve collects the comments that, it's like.
Yeah.
Is
But
everybody?
we're not backing off those stipulations.
No, I'm not accusing
We
you.
agreed to put
Just,
the stairway from Claremont down to the Brook, and we agreed to give the borough conservation easement from Mill Street to the car wash wall for a walking
it
path.
just wasn't mentioned.
I mean, those are shown on plans.
Yeah, all of the things that we stipulated to,
Right.
we're bound by.
Right, and in your presentation tonight, you'll, I'm sure, address them again, so they'll be part of your testimony and presentation again. Because as Mr.
Yeah,
Martin pointed out,
well, as
we do
Mr.
work-
Brightly say, they're on the plans and we stipulate that to the walkway to the brook from Claremont and the easement, conservation easement that we would give to the borough that will run along Millbrook road from Mill Street to our sideline.
Yeah,
Or
I
the
just wanted to
sideline.
make sure we're squared away that, you know, some might going away, that's all I was.
I mean, there were many that are not necessarily on the list. For example, no storage of garbage or recycling out on the plan.
Right,
That's why we end up with the private hall or, you know, from the.
right,
There's several of them.
And all the conditions.
roll forward, but they're sort of in this, you know, collecting it
I'm
status.
not aware of any that would change other than perhaps, if there's going to be testimony about any changes they're gonna make to the plan based on any of the review letters, they may impact some of the prior stipulations.
We'll have testimony to that.
You're probably covering any stormwater, like, adjustments that may have been made, I know there were discussions of, okay, but that's like, okay, we'll get to that. Because there may have been a stipulation there too, or not, so. I'm just trying to make sure we have everything, you know, that we can proceed. Okay, so,
I call my first witness, Mr. G. Migliano, who's been and I've known him for years, but have problems with his name all the time. Who'll testify as to what's been changed and what has been changed with respect to Mr. Brightly's letter. One of the point is, for one reason or another, I left my exhibit list from the previous applications on my kitchen table. So if we could mark these exhibits A with today's date, unless.
From my notes, the last exhibit was exhibit 9, so this would be exhibit 10.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right, well, hello, everyone. My name is Mark Camigliano.
Sir, could you raise your right hand and state your name for the record?
Mark Camigliano.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
Now, do you want requalified for people?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. Please tell me your profession,
I'm a professional engineer.
and do you hold licenses in New Jersey?
Yes, I do.
And have you been the engineer on this application since February of 2022?
Yes, I have.
And you've testified before this board before,
Yes, I have.
and you're familiar with the site, you visited the site,
Yes,
and you were the one who prepared the plan.
that's correct.
Thank you.
I submit to him as an expert and engineer.
I agree, so.
Go ahead.
All right, so, I know there are some, new members here, and, the last time we were here was, about a year ago. So if it's okay, I'd just like to kind of set the scene for you, and did bring, some exhibits with me, some of which I may reference tonight. I have the first one up here on the board, on the easel, and it's called the site plan exhibit. It's dated 11/14/24, and it's a colorized version of the site layout plan in the plans we submitted. It has landscaping added to it as well, and there are some minor modifications that we made based on some review comments and discussions I had with the board engineering. So I'll mark it A10.
Mr. Migliano, could you say that the date of it, the date that was prepared was 11/14?
11/15. And so the property is at the intersection of Claremont Road and Mill Street, it's located in the Quincy Lane redevelopment zone. The property is currently developed with a single family home and a gravel driveway with access off of Mill Street. The mine Brook is located on the east side of the property. It runs from north to south across the property, and there's a floodplain, a floodway, riparian zone along that water course, but there are no freshwater wetlands. All of that's been verified by the DEP, and we have applied for permits for this project and received permits from the DEP for this development along that water course. And now what we're proposing is to construct a two-story townhome building with 2 levels of the townhome and 1 garage level underneath. So from Claremont Road, it'll be 2 stories. From the Brook side of the property, it'll be 3 stories. Access is from Mill Street, and parking is located under the building. Access from Mill Street provides driveway access to parking spaces under the building, and then there are parking spaces which stick out behind the building. The building was described by the architect in great detail at the previous meetings, and the previous proposal was for 8 2-bedroom townhome units. As Mr. Kerno said, we've amended that proposal now to have just 6 2-bedroom townhome units. The building is essentially the exact same building that was presented to the board by the architect. It's just a little smaller. And the 2 units that were taken away were the units on the south side of the building. So the 6 units that remain are still in the same spot as were proposed before. We have parking spaces that are located out behind the building, and a walkway from Claremont Road down to an easement in the back, which will be dedicated to the borough, and it'll contain a walking path along the Mine Brook. The plan that I submitted includes 4 parking spaces that stick out from behind the building, and a walkway that's located just 2 feet off of the side of the building. Based on Mr. Brightly's review letter and discussions he and I had subsequent to the issuance of the review letter, Mr. Brightly expressed some concern in the letter that there wasn't enough space in the garage, at the north end of the garage, for garbage and recycling, utilities and other elements that are going to be located there. So what we decided was to remove 1 space from the building and put it outside the building with the other 4 spaces. So this rendering shows 5 spaces outside the building, which is what was proposed in the previous application, what was reviewed by the DEP, and what was reviewed under the DEP permit for this project. But that leaves additional space now in the building for the trash and recycling area, for utility meters, for a water hot box, and it provides additional space inside the building, and I believe it addresses Mr. Brightly's concerns about the area inside the building. The walkway also has been moved, shown 2 feet off of the building. After we moved it to 12 feet off of the building, that allows when anybody from the public walks down the walkway to the walking trail in the back, they're not right next to the building, right next to one of the windows on the side of the building. That also gives us an opportunity to provide some landscaping along the building and additional landscaping in that area. So the plans that we submitted list all the variances and relief that's required. And the previous plans that were reviewed included variances for building coverage, impervious coverage, steep slope disturbance, and required also a variance for access from Mill Street, and required a design waiver for no off-street loading spaces. Those variances and waivers are still required, but the variances for coverage have been reduced. The proposed building coverage is 5,205 square feet, where 1,375 square feet allowed in the zone. Previously, we were at 6,930 square feet, so we've been reduced the building size substantially. The impervious coverage, the maximum that's allowed is 2,475. The previous application proposed 9,530 square feet. This application proposes 7,700 square feet. That's a little different than the number that's shown on the plan, and the reason that's a little larger than the number shown on the plan is because we moved this parking space outside, moved the walkway a little farther away from the building, so the access into the side of the parking garage is a little longer. So 7,700 square feet is the number we're requesting for the variance for impervious coverage. And then finally, steep slope disturbance. We request variances for disturbance of slopes in 2 of the categories. In the 15 to 25% category, we're proposing the disturbance of 361 square feet, while a maximum, in the 15 to 25 percent category, we're proposing 1,964 square feet, where only 1,000 square feet allowed. And in the greater than 30% category, we're proposing 2,101 square feet, where 250 square feet is allowed. Again, that's a reduction in the slope disturbance from the prior application. At the last couple meetings, we had a planner here which discussed the variances in great detail, and the variances are still the same, just reduced a little bit from the last application.
Just tell me about the steep slopes. What is your position as to the fact that the building acts as a retaining wall?
The the property, there's a natural slope in this area from across Claremont Road down to the stream, but those slopes have been changed by the construction of the road, the construction of the home, or retaining wall that's been built along that area. So those slopes are really just, in my opinion, man-made slopes along the roadway. This project when it disturbs those slopes, it's actually going to eliminate those slopes. The reason one of the reasons we're concerned and regulate steep slope disturbance is because if they're left unvegetated or unprotected, then they can cause erosion, stormwater runoff issues. So you want to make sure that any steep slope disturbance results in slopes that are protected, vegetated, and don't have stormwater discharging across them. And that's the case here. Most of the slopes will be eliminated. Any steep slopes that remain will be protected during construction, revegetated and stabilized after construction, and no stormwater is proposed to be discharged over those slopes. So in my opinion, there's no adverse impacts from the disturbance of the steep slopes by this project.
Do you have an elevation to show the board?
Yes, the project architect submitted plans, and I have a copy of it here. And on those plans, it included an elevation of the building. And this is sheet A3 from the architect's plans. It was submitted with the application, and it shows elevation views of the front of the building on the upper left-hand side of the sheet, the rear of the building on the lower left-hand side of the sheet, and the side elevations on the right. And some of the things we worked on with the architect were to screen the parking garage from anyone at the rear of the building. What's proposed around the parking garage is a 2.5 foot high wall, and then on top of the wall is a white vinyl privacy fence. So that will fully screen the vehicles that are parked inside and underneath the building.
Did we get these numbers? Is this, I know you said A1, but is there an A1 before?
This is sheet A3 that was submitted with the application.
The updated application.
In other words, it doesn't need to be marked.
Right, because it's part of
It is
the
a-
architectural.
It's all right.
Just, what's the date on that?
Last revised 10/3/24.
And the building has an elevator, correct?
Yes, and so the access to the parking garage. A little more detail on the building or the site design. The building will face Claremont Road in the front door, so all the buildings are at face Claremont Road. There'll be doors with step access out to the sidewalk on Claremont Road. Anyone that parks in the parking garage can get to the front door either by stairs on the side of the parking garage or by an elevator or a lift that provides access to the front as well. In the parking garage, there are 14 parking spaces, including the ones sticking out from the back of the building. And there are 88 spaces and EV charging stations in accordance with the code.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Go ahead, Carl. You look poised, ready to ask.
No, I just, regard to the testimony, the steep slope figures that you mentioned, the 15 to 25%, has it changed at all from what's on?
Yeah, and again, and you're right, that's a good point. They are slightly different than the ones that are shown on the plan. And the reason they are slightly different, greater by a couple square feet, are because we have moved the sidewalk a little further away from the building to slightly expand one of the disturbances. So the numbers that I gave you are the numbers for the revised.
Possible to get them again, just Write them down.
Well, I'm sorry.
Can you restate? Restate.
Oh, sure. I'll go through the entire list in the 0 to 15% zone, category. We're proposing 7,154 square feet, which complies with the ordinance. In the 15 to 25% category, we're proposing 1,964 square feet, where 1,000 square feet is allowed, so that requires a variance. In the 25 to 30% category, we're proposing 361 square feet. We're allowed up to 500 square feet, so that complies with the ordinance. And in the greater than 30% category, 2,101 square feet, where 250 square feet are allowed, and that requires a variance as well.
I think that this is just one of the items, the two EV, the non-ADA and the two regular EV spaces are supposed to be on the exterior wall.
That's correct, and Mr. Bright pointed that out in his review memo, and we did go through that in detail. The two non-ADA EV spaces will be located outside the building, but the ADA space, which will be have a charging station there as well, will be inside the building.
The rear required, one's gonna be
Located outside the building, but the
handicap space, parking, two outside.
will be
No, just the two.
Just these two. So this one remains.
Did you need to ask them if they agree? You would ask them if they agree to everything in your memo, right?
Only they could go through it, they should discuss whether there's anything here that's they have an issue with.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've gone through the review letters, we have no issues with those, the comments, and have to make revisions to address those.
The biggest change I think that Mark mentioned was removing one of the spaces up against the Claremont wall.
Complete cover. Anything with stormwater, that everything's okay?
Yeah, they complied with, I would say most of it, there's more, just a couple, clean out issues, well. Some of the elevations were requested, the invert elevation.
Yeah, well, there's some adjustments to some of the numbers, some of the invert elevations, details.
One man's lower in the system, so, minor stuff,
And maintenance and management of the stormwater
yeah,
system?
we'll need a manual for that, it's pretty much a standard condition.
Right.
A lot of the comments in our review are kind of carried over from the prior hearing, so.
Right.
Moving forward.
And the overflow from the somewhere, that just goes right into the Milburn pipe.
It's
They were putting a pipe in or something.
like a 6-inch pipe, is it 6 or 8 pipe?
Right.
What was that, the?
Pipe that overflows into the.
Yeah, I think it's a 12-inch pipe that overflows into the. Yeah, it's a.
You have a DEP permit.
Yeah, everything's good there, that's all, I'm just. I'm thinking without standing, anything else.
Yeah, it's a 6-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And they've done the soil testing already, so.
And that was included in the DEP permit.
Do you want to bring up your point about the plans? There's an architect. In terms of the floor plan, inconsistency.
Pardon me?
In terms of an inconsistency in the floor plans, in this, these exhibits.
Uh-huh,
Cover that?
yeah, clear.
I don't know the number of this. Could be a little different. If you look at the floor plan, and each of both the side and the back and the front of the building, the windows that are indicated on the floor plans don't reflect what you have in the elevation.
Like, the floor plan says there are 2 windows, the elevation says 3 windows.
And they're different windows, they're
Yeah.
different placement of the window. It looks like, if you look at one of them,
Your rendering doesn't match the
the
floor plan.
render of the actual elevation on the outside, which doesn't match
They do.
A2.
At least in the window openings don't match.
We can correct that.
I'm sure you can.
Pointed out,
Yeah.
maybe just do a pass through.
That's just a scrivener's error.
Because the question, what's gonna govern the
Yeah,
elevation
is
view? or floor
Is
plan?
the architect here?
No, he's not.
In my experience.
He testified twice, but that wasn't brought up previously.
Well, this is new.
Yeah, so we'll address
It
that.
needs to be addressed, but historically, in my experience, we always refer to the architectural plans or the permits. They're the ones that seal them in the building, so we'll rely on those, but I think they're.
Yeah, no, I don't think we had an issue with either one, we've just been consistent. You know, so the vision, the view that you see is not.
Well, I think it's just
Triple door.
triple door is first the
I think we
elevation
follow
view
the
of the
elevations.
windows, then
We can say.
you can say that technically covered in condition.
Which do you prefer?
Well, we could plan.
What,
Do you like the 3 windows and?
I would look in here, I would like
These are construction.
the actual windows that they put on their architectural drawing. And consistent with the interior.
you're saying a picture drawing.
Yeah.
They like the elevation, the colorized drawing.
Yeah, we'll clean it up, but these aren't construction plans. I mean, we're gonna have to go to
Their
the,
concept.
building inspector and present them. If you want it cleaned up, we'll clean it up.
Well, it's not so much cleaning them up, it's been consistent.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. But they're not construction plans.
Well, the problem is that the board heard a lot of testimony regarding the elevation, was, there was a lot of support from the look of the building.
Correct.
That might change if there's only 2 windows spaced.
And maybe what we could do is we could submit revised architectural plan before the next meeting, so you can see what the final.
But you can indicate that you believe we can be more consistent with the elevation in the floor plan, and that's what happened. Yeah, no, yeah, it might not be 100, but it'd be pretty close.
Yeah. We'll take care of that.
And the building department will also.
But they like the elevation, but we're gonna try and match it, and we're gonna come very, very close. And maybe 1 or 2 minor things, but that's.
So,
You can't, you have to be sworn, Rick.
Yeah, you want to swear everybody else in that wants to testify tonight, that would make our life.
Maybe we can do that.
Do it in mock.
You could just raise your hand and say your name on the record.
My name is Richard Reimers, REIMERS.
All right, Mr. Rivers, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. And could you give the board the benefit of your credentials?
Yes, I've been, working with Mr. Masucci for 40 years. We've developed 40 or 50 projects together and got many approvals. in front of us.
You're a principal of,
Yes.
of the applicant, right?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And just to clarify what you're saying, so.
So I see the inconsistencies and we're gonna make them match, but we will favor the elevation. Without dwelling on it, I think we can get almost exact, but there may be minor details and we'll get them to you. We won't favor the floor plan, we'll favor the elevation. Okay?
Yeah, we only picked that one, she only picked that one after.
Yeah, I see it.
There could be other things too, but we obviously don't know. You'll find them.
We'll send you revised and we'll make it look very, very similar to these elevation.
Now, was there Bob, was there an agreement, or well, actually, was there an agreement that this will now be, trash will be picked up by a hauler?
That was what I had on notes that they're getting out for.
People aren't gonna be taking yellow and green containers out to the street.
So there's a testimony that they were in kind of, small pickup type trucks come down and.
Come down there and pick it up.
Take everything. That was the test.
So they'll be under, because now the garbage is under,
Yes.
That's right.
underground, okay.
And the county approves that, the county approves that.
Can you just testify to that?
Yeah, it's gonna be by a private waste hauler, so it'll all be, privately coordinated between the owner and, private waste hauler. We contacted one and, you know, if the project's constructed, they'll be, providing service to it, and they have pickup truck size, vehicles, and they'll handle the,
I'm talking about the county pickup of the recyclables. Because normally they want that out on the street.
yeah, but it'll be the waste hauler collecting this.
So if we're looking at, again, revisiting how this operates, the people that live in the apartment in the units are gonna, deposit their checks by going out their front doors. Right, down the elevator, probably, but over to the common collection area, and deposit the stuff, and then go back up the elevator and back into their yard. Right?
That's correct.
That's the expectation. And then you'll work it out operationally, whether there's any separation requirements or whatever.
That's right.
That seems like what it was gonna be.
This isn't a question. I'm assuming that you're responsible for the easement, for the path, the walking path.
What's the question?
The
It's an
walking,
easement, so who's responsible for maintaining it? That's all I was asking.
I'm working that out with Mr. Pigeon, the borough attorney. We're giving the easement to the borough.
So am I correct, though, that there's no, that may not get built at the same time the house may get, the houses, the townhomes may get built, is that correct?
The easement?
Yeah, you're not built, are you building the walking path as part of the project? Or are you just giving the easement with the right for the borough to go back and build
The latter.
the second?
We're giving an easement.
So you're just dedicating the easement for a future use?
Correct.
Or a path behind. The path that connects from Claremont down to the river, is that also part of the easement?
Well, we're building that
Okay,
and dedicating it to the public.
so
That,
and that
I
is.
got you, so I'm just gonna ask the engineer, make my life easier. So on that A10, right, the path that goes vertical from Claremont down to the river, that will be constructed.
Yeah.
Part of this project.
That's correct.
Okay, the path, the thinner path that goes from Mill Street and runs parallel to the river, that will not be constructed.
I don't know that that's been decided yet. I think that's what the.
It's not part of this application. You can't say that's gonna be constructed, as you.
we're gonna give the easement.
You're gonna give the easement, I just want the board to be clear that at this point in time, that is not part of the bill, is that correct?
I believe so, right? Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm fine with it, I just wanna make sure I
Yeah,
understand it. But that's not a trick question, not a trick question.
Now, are the stairs from Mill Street to the path? Sorry, there's stairs. Is there
There's stairs, yes, those are their concrete stairs that we added, which will, what we match the stairs that are across the street, across Claremont and the.
No, I meant from Mill Street.
Oh, from Mill Street, no, there are no stairs,
It
that's
just
a,
gets to the wall there.
walking. There's no, the path will, enter in, between the wall and the river. There'll be a fence, on the, as you're walking down the path from Mill Street on the left side of the path, to protect, anyone on the path in the steep slope there.
But the key is there's no exit on that path to Mill Street.
Is there? Yes, there.
There is,
Yeah.
so it's stairs.
There's no stairs.
Just level.
It's just, right, just follow, it's a walking path.
Slopes up. Yep. Okay, so there's, I guess the better question, there's access from the future path to North Street. And
Then whoever builds that future path will have to figure it out.
along the same lines as, that, you have your answer.
I
As long
just want to make sure we
as,
all understood what.
there has been also discussion of the other side of the brook. Because your property
We would give,
includes the other bank.
we would give that as part of the easement to the other,
easement.
because I'm not testifying here, but we believe that the path belongs on that side, not on our side of it.
Understood.
But the easement would extend to our property line. I think that's to the east.
That is correct.
Right, so it would extend across the brook to the east.
Okay. So the easement isn't just a 3-foot path, the easement is,
The
as you
easement,
said,
yeah.
is from that boundary to your easterly property line.
We'd be obligated to do a meets and bounds description. And present it to Mr. Pigeon for his approval.
So, that's just wanted to ask our board attorney. So, correct, the easement is beyond our jurisdiction, that is between the borough and the applicant?
Yeah, the way that it would appear in a resolution of approval, it would be an easement granted by the applicant to the borough, subject to the approval of the borough.
Correct, and but what those requirements are, I believe one of the board members regarding maintenance or upkeep or who builds what, that's not within our jurisdiction, that's really the boroughs as to what.
Yeah, ironing out all those finer details really is better left
To the borough, okay, thank you.
Well, what about the stairs? We have to
The big stairs, from Claremont to the.
Claremont to this future path, no stairs for the used by residents and live here, because that's really the only way they can get to the back.
But I think they're building that as part of the.
They are building.
Yeah.
Clarification on the need.
It's not part of the.
Yeah.
I don't think that's in the need. That might just be an accident. Okay. So that was a question from the engineer. I'll just restate it. I think his concern was that path that you're definitely building, the vertical path. Also has stairs in it. And that is your maintenance?
No, that will be part of the easement that goes to the borough.
The stairs?
That's part of your access as well, though.
So it won't be exclusive. I'm sorry, the stairs are gonna be permitted in the easement?
Correct, okay,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's not
like a-
on that. They're not part of the. They're not, they're outside the easement, so you might have to investigate. I would like that.
Weren't we just kind of dedicated?
The stair will be in the easement. The stair will be in the easement. There's. So it will be given, you will, but it will be given to the town.
But that's not what
We're gonna build a stairway.
Right.
And we're gonna put in an easement and give it to the town for public use. That's the extent of our involvement with that stairway. It's become a public.
So in addition to the river area, you're going to also have an easement for the stairway.
Yes, yeah, for the stairway.
That's not a problem.
No, I'm just saying it's wrong. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be-
And
It's two different things. And that's
Yes.
okay.
And the easement in the rear is going to extend across the brook where we think the pathway should be in any event.
We look at sheet.
So in my head, so in my head, since you passed the. Wait.
No. Let's.
So, Counselor, just so I understand, in my head. The vertical walkway that has stairs, right, that connects Claremont, runs alongside the property. Is going to be constructed as part of your project. right? So far I'm correct.
Yeah,
Okay, so our concern is, should it not be accepted the way you described in your negotiations, fail with the municipality as to who maintains it? Absent that, I would make this a condition that you're not gonna be able to build it until that easement is in place and understood with regard to who controls it.
that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be
That would be a
acceptable.
condition to.
No, that's.
Any building is that an easement needs to be in place, acceptable to the borough with regards to maintenance and long-term control.
Building the stairwell.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right, but that will be a condition
they
of
can still
compliance.
exit to grass from the garage.
Yeah. But that's how we'll deal with
Right, and then
that.
the
Is that-
egress from the garage, is just something that's required by the fire department. It doesn't have to be connected to anything, doesn't have to have a path there, it's just an emergency access for the police department.
I know, I just wanted
So
to
it
make,
doesn't, well, I think the comment was that was our access, but that's just, that's not our access to you.
As long as there's some type of guarantee. Performance bond, whatever, those steps will get built once the easement gets ironed out.
The formal thing, I don't want to belabor the discussion upstairs, but I think that there appears to be another inconsistency, just to point out, on whatever the slope one is. The stairs are very close to the building, whereas on this one, it seems wider. And I know that was a change that was made.
Yeah, our original plan showed the stairs close to the building, Mr. Brightly suggested we move it farther away, I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah,
Part of it, making the.
Just because this one is a little closer, so it's right.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, it's, I'm referring to the stairs on the other side of the building, on Mill Street side.
Yes.
The
front stairs.
Yeah, the front stairs on 81. It appears that it's open from the Claremont side.
Is there a gate there or anything, or is it just?
No, it's there, okay.
So
Oh.
the public can get down there to the recyclable area. Am I understanding this going properly? Or is there a card or something?
Yeah, so there'll be, not at the top, but at the door, at the parking garage, there'll be a door at the parking garage, which will only be accessible by the tenant.
So there's no public access to it.
There's not, no.
No, they could just go through the road.
Yeah. I'm just thinking.
No, just clarity on the drawing, that if you're gonna put a door there, then put a door there.
Right.
Show
There's not, no.
it. Similarly, the elevator would just be for the use of the residents.
Yeah, and the elevator has a door on the parking on the side. It also shows on A2 that there's a door coming out of the building itself,
That's right, and those will only be accessible by the,
some kind of key card or,
yes.
okay.
Anybody else have to find tonight?
No, sir.
So then, any questions from our professionals for the witness? Okay,
No, it's just an apology, Eastman doesn't keep the stairs, but on my confidence, I can go over my apologies. You covered it.
so this is the only witness, we can take questions or comments, right?
Well, we have,
Start with
we have to come back on the 14th.
Anyway.
Or 12th or whatever.
Comment here too.
So were you planning to call any other witnesses?
Only, no, not tonight.
Well, next time, were you planning to call any other witnesses?
Only if, we feel that maybe there's an architectural question or something, but, I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to the planning testimony, everything was placed on the record by Mr. McDonough. It's still relevant to the application going forward, so I don't think we need to recall him, because all they did was minimize the variances that it's the same relief. So, they addressed those comments in my comments as well, as the application's been amended.
Well, we had
So, so for the record, John, so you're saying that because they reduced the
Since this is going to do so.
significance of those deviations, that Mr. McDonough's testimony is sufficient as
It's
is?
still relevant, it's still sufficient and satisfies in my view the.
Fair enough. So you don't have a need for, you're not advising us that we have a need for him to come back?
You could eliminate the site.
They eliminated that whole plan revision.
Okay,
And.
so he's saying you don't need to bring your plan, which is good.
That's why I'm opening.
That's a benefit to you, that you don't have to hear that,
I love that.
the open space. We had two planners testify.
I'm just, Counselor, the only reason I'm asking is because, you know, I know this has had a long history. You know, it's only 9 o'clock and, you know, if you didn't have a need or desire to bring anyone else, you know, you can wrap up and we won't deliberate. Leave that for public here, can do some questions. I think we then officially close the hearing. And then all that would happen on December 12th would be for us to catch up to speed on the prior testimony, so that we could then vote.
Correct.
That choice is yours. I leave that up to you, what you want to do.
I have some more questions.
Yeah, no. That, it's only not John, you can go for a while.
John, in your letter, the planning comments, number 2 seems to be just a verbatim repetition. And it has not been adjusted to reflect 6 units and.
Correct. What my memorandum did was just merely, what I like to do is highlight changes for the body of it, so that you can see what's changed from the prior.
Right, it did.
And
No, that's, I understand. Now, it's still an 8-unit application according to your comments.
no, it's crossed out as a 6.
No, it's not.
Last you get the wrong. It's crossed out on the report. Revised.
No.
Yeah, okay. Mine is it, maybe,
No, on the last page, it's not.
the good, last page?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, there's one area that was.
The one revised through November 8th?
Yeah, the latest one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's at the typo.
No, I know, and now is the requirement is still 2 units, because it's rounded up?
It's gonna have to be renegotiated, because they're doing it in lieu of payment. It's still gonna be 50%. Well, now I'm hearing that it's an owner or rental?
Rental.
Okay, then 15%, and that will be negotiated, and I guess renegotiated.
They need to renegotiate with the town, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure they're aware of that.
I've spoken to Mr. Pigeon about that,
Okay,
and I didn't want to waste his time until we got an approval, otherwise it would be silly to spend a lot of time reaching an agreement as to the payment in lieu.
yeah, no, I just want to be sure to cover it. I mean, it was 98% you were covering it.
That's covered.
Just as a courtesy, just, you know, go back. And John, number 6 on the final one on that page, is that resolved now? Like the pipings or, you know, structures? It's not clear how refuse will be managed.
Oh, let me explain. Those are the previous planning comments that have been addressed, but I kept them there for historical purposes.
Right.
But if you look at my memo, it's the previous comments are presented below for information. They've addressed it, you talked about the garbage collection, you talked about the units and the set aside, you talked about all of these things. They've created the easement, they've addressed my comments, I have no concern with that. I just did that for informational reasons.
Yeah, it probably would be easier if you said resolved. Or
Yeah,
something like that.
I apologize for that.
I'll petty, but
I will,
at least we're paying attention, right?
At least we're reading this.
All right, we're reading this. Okay, are there any questions? We'll do questions first. Any questions about this? To this witness, really, I guess, any questions about the application, any of the witnesses? Come on down, stand, you know well, you're standing on the X, so.
Yeah, Johanna Winsinger, representing the Environmental Commission.
If I could just swear you in.
Oh, yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing?
I-
Thank you.
Okay, so you can ask questions and make comments.
And comment? Okay,
He swore you.
oh, okay. I wasn't prepared for that, but, several times I've heard this application, in regards to steep slopes, say it's man-made as opposed to natural. So my understanding is the ordinances in municipalities for steep slopes is a great concern for velocity of water coming down a steep slope. So, could you explain to me and the board, what difference it makes if it's there, whether it's man-made or, natural?
With respect to the erosion and the velocity or the stormwater concerns, it's essentially the same.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Also, is the street level higher than the lower property or most of the property?
I'm sorry,
The street level,
street level?
topography wise, is it higher? Is the street
The street higher than this property?
higher?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm concerned about is, it seemed to me that she presented as if the building is a buffer for water coming down, or water will come down the street in extreme storms. What happens to the water that goes over that edge? Does the steep slope affect that?
Well, water, what happens today or after the building's built? Because today the water that's in the street is collected in drains and piped to the streams. And then water from the property, runs off to the street. Under proposed conditions, the water from the street will still be the same. Water from the property, from the building will be collected and piped to an infiltration basin, which will infiltrate into the ground. And overflow water will go to the stream. And so the way that it's been designed and what the ordinance requires is there's no increase in runoff for certain storm events. And we've designed the system to comply with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
If you could raise your right hand, state your name and direct.
Aaron Duff, out of the 51 Crusty Drive.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Mr. Gagliano, the Claremont Road sidewalk, can you tell me the width on your design plans for that sidewalk?
I believe it's 7 feet.
Okay, and are you familiar with the Quimby Lane redevelopment plans, sidewalk, minimum sidewalk regulations?
Yes.
And what are those?
Well, that's 8 feet. This was covered in detail.
If you give me, it's, I think it's a year now,
Well, it just wasn't part of my testimony.
Okay.
That's all.
yeah.
So I think that you're supposed to be asking me questions on my testimony.
He can ask you questions about the money you gave previously as well.
Are you aware of, any additional, setbacks from the curb that are required under, QLRP section 6.11? For instance, any planting zones, things of that nature?
There are streetscape standards, which we've discussed in detail.
Okay, so are you seeking variance relief from those, standards?
I believe there was relief is required for the streetscape standards, yes.
That same would you agree with me, that same QLRP section 6.11 provides for standards for, walkways within the Minebrook Park?
I can't tell you based on the number what the requirement is without the ordinance.
Okay, are you seeking any type of variance or relief from those standards as it applies to walkways within the Minebrook Park?
And walkways, what was the last one?
Within the Minebrook Park area?
Within the park? I'm not sure.
Given the easement. I guess I'm in on that a little bit. Technically, your plan shows a 4-foot walkway. The redevelopment requires it in 6. 12. I'm sorry, 12. But it's conceptual at this point from what I'm hearing, because it may go on the other side, which can then comply, so we don't know where that pathway is gonna go. Is that correct? Because the easement goes beyond the river on the other side.
Correct.
Are you planning on providing any type of pathway as part of this development application, on either side of the Monroe?
We're providing, access from the Claremont to a easement in the back, and then the easement, would be given to the borough to install a pathway if they choose.
But you're not providing a walkway? Are you seeking variance relief, from that requirement?
If variance relief is required, then, you see that.
Okay, thank you.
And that would have been covered by the plan.
Previously, yeah. And you believe? No. Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I had.
Aaron, the QLRP streetscape stuff.
Also 6.11.
Yeah, is there, John, is there something related to that?
We talked about that extensively, and I pointed out in my original memorandum that there were compliance issues. And what was discussed was the county refused a lot of the streetscape. Improvements because of widening. And they're not permitting street trees, for example, and shrubs and things of that nature, and that was all discussed.
Did the county prohibit a 12-foot sidewalk area? Or is it only the street trees and the other?
The sidewalk area is a function of what's left in the right of way after the dedication. Streetscaping was their big concern, I recall.
Okay, so it's potential hardship to,
It's another jurisdiction, and so, and they have primary jurisdiction in the county right of way.
right,
You don't want to get into this.
county sidelines and things like that. Right? Okay, I remember this, that's your basic answer, and you would say,
So
On that
technically,
basis-
as an abundance of caution, if the board feels appropriate, they can grant that relief if you're inclined to grant the application.
do they have, so they have to request relief?
You can identify it as part of the review and include it in your deliberation. Because a lot of times when you review an application, relief comes up as a result of either amendments or something that gets picked up.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to exclude it, you've done the work on the comments, and it seems to me we should capture
Yeah, well,
the position.
And John, is that a variance or design waiver?
These are variances.
For the streetscape?
I can double check. The slopes were identified as waivers, they're variances. I'll double check the plan and. I didn't prepare the previous plan, I prepared the amendment.
Okay.
I have it.
So in any case, we should probably capture whatever the.
Yeah,
What I will do is,
No, I
I didn't
understand,
know what we're gonna call it.
get the right term, yeah.
yeah, we can clarify that in between now and. then.
Yeah, that's fine.
Of course. Any other questions from the public or comments from the public?
Is this the final opportunity for the public to comment?
There'll be another hearing, you know.
So they're
be
not
curious.
resting yet, we're gonna,
So, yeah, if you want to save your powder, you can, or you can.
I would like to hear, the entire presentation of the applicant. So I'll.
Just so, they may not offer any more witnesses, just so you're aware.
As long as the public is presenting,
Yeah, that's
opportunity to
fine.
comment, that's fine with me. Thank you.
And Jake's not here, so anyway, okay, then I think unless we have comments, and any other questions from this question, basically from our professionals of the board, then basically we're done, at this meeting with this application, and it's carried, and there's no further notice to do.
To December 12th, right?
December 12th, 2024, correct.
Thank you, and
Thank you for your attention.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So,
We're still on the record. So you know.
Yeah. everyone's on So, the next thing would be just to review the status of that application. We have indicated about the agenda that the,
Oh, right.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Go back.
Yes.
Good night, thank you.
Dr. Carmen.
Well,
He's gonna do.
you're no lie.
Which meeting is it in January?
So the,
December 12th?
yes, so the next meeting is December 12th, and then.
Then they said, that's what we had in teed up.
Yes, but then they got back to me and said they
They have conflict and they want to do January.
wanted to
And
January.
so the key is what's our January meeting?
9th or 23rd. So, well, first of all, it's gonna be our reorg meeting, and I thought that I was gonna post this. The notice. The notice is actually posted on the board downstairs, but we did notice, when we noticed all the meetings for this year, we did notice the reorg meeting. And just as long as council meets before that, which they have to meet, I believe, by the 7th anyway. I think. So because there's only one meeting in January, I think it may have been scheduled for the 16th, but I have to verify. The
No.
16th?
No,
Would be the 9th or the 23rd. It was, well,
for the reorg?
yeah,
No, the question is,
No, the question is for-
53 Morristown Road.
Oh,
Is not, has indicated they're not coming December 12th.
Oh.
And they would like us to carry it, so.
we have to do the meeting.
Well, I was just gonna say.
Yes, the
usually when we
ninth,
do an
I'm sorry.
notice, we include the reorg meeting, and I noticed you may already have it.
well, I did, but I don't have the notice with me. Okay, but I think it's, I think it's the 9th.
I mean, the second,
You want me to-
second Thursday is the.
Yes, it is, but I don't know, I'm not positive that that's the date. Want me to run down and look at
The
it?
date for what? Our date?
The January
The
meeting.
date that we,
Meeting?
Agreed.
the date,
Oh,
that-
the date that you agreed with them. Okay, you're gonna go find out what we told them we would do.
right,
Okay, now I understand.
let me go see.
Is it online? Not.
That was,
I think that's the date though. You're
Mr. Zazarino may not be here yet. He has to find it out with Chad.
Yeah, there won't be any fighting with Chad. It's looking like, Chad will be very,
Willing?
we offer him position.
So, congratulations, by the way.
I appreciate it.
All right, good.
It's, I think
So, yeah, anyway, we'll need to do, not as brutal as coverage for this last one, like who's allowed and who's not, but we'll need to do one for this also because it's, positioning and who's.
You have an answer?
I do have an answer. So either way, it has to be renoticed because there's a typo. It says Thursday the 13th and Thursday is not. Thursday is the 9th or or the 23rd.
So,
It's a-
since everything we noticed, you just want to check with them and let us know.
So my proposal is this.
Well, no, we can basically decide now when we wanna do. the
Well, we
reorg.
can decide our bill. We don't know if they're available on the ninth.
So it's currently listed still, if you can do anything for the 12th.
No, it's listed for the 13th, which is
No, no,
not a Thursday.
It's listed for December 12th. That's
Oh,
what we-
yes,
We carried it to. So let's not touch it, and on December 12th, when we come, we'll figure out where to put them.
Oh, I got you, okay, all right, and I'll talk to them in the
Application.
meantime.
It's still technically until we do anything, it's listed
And
for the
we
12th.
can,
And
right,
on the 12th,
we can.
we'll write the ship.
Yeah.
We'll figure out where they wanna
They don't
be,
wanna be, and it could be without further notice.
and then it's without further notice. Does that work, Counselor?
That works.
That's a Monday,
Yeah.
then ninth would be a Wednesday, so it'd have to be the 10th.
January 9th is a Thursday.
It is?
Yeah, it's a Thursday,
That's my suggestion. Kick the December 12th.
that makes sense. And then in the meantime, I can see what I can
Confirm
find
with
out if
that,
they're available.
what the date is.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, anything else for tonight?
Oh, yeah, it has to be in the first week this year.
I mean, whoever's.
Real meeting. Not our, you mean.
Yeah, well, the reorg meeting would still be the 9th.
Yes.
Okay, if they can't make the 9th, then they'll get a late date. Okay.
Go, next. All right. Anything else?
No visitors, no executive session. All right, anything else? All right.
You have no. That is.
My children.
You're very welcome.
They noticed it.
No,
So that will. Like to be just.
not a, Kate Spade.
Because they sent. So.
I think he's taking part of it because I went. Because I was like.
Yeah. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
The borough has a plan.
Yeah, he's obviously not present.
I said,
Yeah, I definitely recognize it.
an application. But it's not site plan, and she.
He's, yeah, because I must be
But we
from.
need an application so that we can
And the.
see who's gonna be presenting, with the signature from the school.
You need something.
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Well, I said I will.
Then
share
I
that.
suppose I
It's
need
like
it.
formality.
That's why. I see what you, yeah.
So I just got it a couple days ago.
Yeah,
I feel like it's.
We probably need to redevelop the current school.
I mean, yeah.
Administrator.
For representing the town.
So she keeps that.
Oh, well, honestly,
I don't think.
well, okay, it'll be the next one.
Every time.
Yes, there.
Even if it's just, no word on that, doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Well, and so she finally did it, but that she said. I'm trying to think, and I said,
You gotta
"Where
make sure."
she was supposed to send me 13.
So Denise, Denise. Denise.
Yes.
I know it's a mini fire drill compared to the last one. Can you just?
I'm gonna-
Prepare who's.
Hopefully. But yeah, it's the, from last year.
Tell you the truth, I was a great.
Who's heard?
I don't know.
Really?
Oh, gosh.
It took me till I hit 52 to get glasses. I was like,
Oh,
Well, that's 1 year. So
I'm 52.
what's that?
I'm 52.
Oh, are you really? Yeah.
no problem, but yeah.
Craziness.
Oh, I'm.
And then I guess you'll follow up.
Something really bad in the last week where I thought so.
That's
the point when you go, yeah.
Oh,
So,
my neighbors.
you saw the email I sent.
My neighbors.
About the links.
And the daughter's been dating this one guy. for
Right.
like 6 years. I don't really know, but I've seen him a bunch. I knew his brother.
Yeah.
And they were, I knew people were there, and they were both families were there. And I saw a boyfriend, I said, hey, you must be the new guy.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, it's Dan, actually.
Which is overcrowding.
Joe,
Yeah.
excuse 1 second.
We do request when you receive an email from her about whether you're gonna show up, then you respond.
I usually let her know when I'm not responding. I don't ever let her know when I'm responding.
Now,
I give the negative, I don't give the positive.
I have perfect attendance.
So,
well,
You don't respond.
it's just,
do you want, oh,
Maybe
okay.
those two things are cool.
please.
I barely check
We'll
that
respond.
email,
We'll
but
give you
okay.
that. Yep.
I might have to give you a different email then,
Okay.
because I
Did
don't
you
check,
get
I don't check that.
Cranky.
Is that what you gave it to me? So you
I
don't-
think-
No, it's my personal email, I don't check it.
I spoke to an attorney who literally lets.
We get the email from here to respond
That
if
is
you're
me.
gonna go,
That is
and then
me.
for the Board of Health, I get an email to say,
You can't
respond
leave
if
me a
you're not
voicemail.
gonna go.
Couldn't do it.
But I usually
You got
respond to this
call and
one.
then they-
Oh, no.
And I think
That's so
emails,
unfair. People your age get very upset in all sorts of business with people my age for not having voicemails or B, having
no,
them full.
I don't-
I try to be very